All right, for this video, I wanted to talk about the raw primal diet. Now, personally, I've been on the carnivore diet for a full year now, but I have dabbled with raw meat, and it's been very nice. I enjoy raw meat. I enjoy eating raw ground beef, raw steak, some raw pork, some raw fish, some raw eggs. And overall, I'm a fan of raw meat, but I wanted to critique the raw primal diet in particular because I believe it's not quite implemented optimally. And there are some strong voices online, people like Goatis, who have abdicated for the raw primal diet, and many people are following his lead. And while I do think he's right about raw meat, I do think raw meat is healthy because, after all, raw meat has more B vitamins, more taurine, generally more nutrients than cooked meat, and also less inflammatory chemicals, less carcinogens, and it also, of course, has more probiotics. So, in that sense, I believe Goatis is right that raw meat is a health food, and by all means, eat raw meat. With that said, I think that there's other things that Goatis has said that are not correct, and I want to talk about in this video which of those things are not correct. And I think I'm going to break it up into 4 issues. Issue number 1 is eating too much liver and exposure to copper. Issue number 2 is getting not enough salt and minerals. Issue number 3 is too many carbs and too much fructose and deuterium. And then finally, the last issue is undereating. Okay, so first issue, number 1, is eating too much liver and copper toxicity. Now, this is actually the biggest issue with the raw primal diet. And I was recently exposed to experts in copper toxicity like Judy Cho, Garrett Smith, Courtney Snyder, and they have clinical experience with hair tissue mineral analysis, where they basically take pieces of hair from people and they test them for copper toxicity and other mineral imbalances. And they have found that copper toxicity is widespread. It's actually epidemic in America and potentially in Europe as well. And there's reasons for that. Namely, in America, we do have copper water pipes. So the water itself, the tap water, is actually toxic in copper. And not to mention, it's also in copper jewelry, it's in swimming pools, and it's in plant-based eating. So if you actually have eaten plants in the past, you could be copper toxic just from those plants. And then similarly, now they're spraying copper sulfate pesticides on veggies that people are eating, both in the US and Europe. So they're spraying copper literally on the plants. So anyone who has done plant-based eating in the past likely has copper toxicity. And on top of that, copper is put into IUDs and birth control to cause infertility. The whole point of copper is to basically reduce the fertility or stop fertility. And so naturally, there's all these symptoms of copper toxicity that you have to worry about, including infertility, but also including brain disorders like mood disorders, bipolar, depression, and especially ADHD. Copper is the key cause of ADHD. And so there's all these issues you have to worry about with copper toxicity. But guess what is super high in copper? Well, liver. Liver is one of the highest foods in copper out there. And of course, it's not just copper. You have to worry about basically a copper zinc imbalance. So they sort of antagonize each other in a sense that if you have too much copper, you tend to have low zinc. And zinc can help push copper down. So a good way to deal with copper toxicity, if you do have it, is to increase your zinc intake. Take zinc supplements or eat a zinc-rich diet. But in any case, it's incorrect to think of liver as a nutrient-dense food. Rather, you should think of it as a nutrient asymmetric food. It has some nutrients in massively high quantities, like copper and like vitamin A, but in some of the B vitamins as well. But it's very low in the other fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin K, and it's also very low in zinc. And so you're getting a very poor zinc to copper ratio when you eat liver. Instead, I personally recommend eating muscle meat instead of liver, and I have totally cut liver out of my diet. Liver is not a health food. It's yet another superfood, quote unquote superfood, that is actually toxic. Remember the phrase toxic superfoods? Well, liver is a great example of a superfood that is actually toxic. And as Garrett Smith has pointed out, liver is basically the garbage dump of the body. That's where the body dumps its toxins. Copper is a toxin, so it dumps, when cows eat copper, they dump their copper into their liver because that's where the toxins get stored. Okay, so that's the biggest issue with the raw primal diet. Please take that message home. You have to worry about copper toxicity and cut down your liver. Uh, okay, point number two is salt. Now, when you listen to Goatis, he recommends avoiding salt. He says, oh, eat unsalted butter. Salt is poison. And first of all, when you do open a biochemistry textbook, any textbook will point out that sodium and chloride are key electrolytes that you need in your body. So it is, absolutely true that you cannot survive without sodium. That by itself should tell you that, well, you do need some salt. But personally, I do heavily salt my foods, and I also take other electrolyte supplements like magnesium, potassium, and also calcium. But the key reason why many of us need more salt is because we are detoxing oxalates. Many of us have actually eaten plants in the past, and we've switched over to a meat-based diet, and that includes the raw primal people, by the way. And so those guys probably have eaten plants in the past, and now they have oxalate toxicity, and they got to get those oxalates out of their bodies. So they need to increase their intake of electrolytes, including salt, in order to help their body to excrete those oxalates in the poop and in the urine. So do not avoid salt. That is an actual myth that you should avoid salt. Okay, so that's a second key point. Please do not avoid your salt. And many raw primal people, I think, are salt deficient. Interestingly, when you are salt deficient, you actually tend to crave carbs and sugar more. Because as you can imagine, sugar and carbs tend to retain electrolytes. They tend to retain salt in your body. So I was watching a raw primal video from a guy named Andreas Nielsen, and he pointed out that he was craving carbs a lot. But he also pointed out that he felt much better whenever he started to actually intake some salt. And so that's your body telling you that, hey, I need more electrolytes. And so if you want to eliminate your carb cravings, try increasing your salt intake. So that's another point, which leads us to just generally the fact that the raw primal diet does not discourage carbs. In fact, some people like Goatis drink coconut milk or they eat fruit, high sugar fruits and things. And I do not recommend that. I'm personally in ketosis right now. And I think it is optimal to be in ketosis. And so, naturally fructose is a toxin, and it's a toxin to your liver as well as to your brain, causes fatty liver disease, causes Alzheimer's. So fructose is not good for you. And then second of all is that deuterium, which is a key cause of cancer, is high in plant sugars. So when you're drinking, coconut water, it's actually quite high in deuterium. And similarly for other fruits and things like that. So you're obviously going to increase your risk for cancer there. So I would say that's the third issue with the raw primal diet is just too many carbs. Just like carbs are not good for you. Just cut them out, okay? Get into ketosis. And then finally, the fourth issue, if you want to have like quote unquote carbs, then have animal carbs like raw milk. Like you can drink your raw milk, which has a little bit of carbs in it, but animal carbs are actually low in deuterium, whereas plant-based carbs are high in deuterium. Okay. The fourth point is that people tend to undereat on the raw primal diet. I was also listening to Andreas Nielsen, and he said that he was noticing that when he ate raw meat, he felt like he was not getting enough meat into his body. But then he noticed that whenever he was actually cooking his meat, all of a sudden it tasted so much better and he could eat tons of meat. And he was missing that nourishment. He needed to eat more meat. And so you have to watch out for undereating on the raw primal diet. Now, I personally eat both raw meat and cooked meat, but I do find that both taste great, both taste wonderful, but they're complementary. And in a practical setting, it's actually very hard to only eat raw meat when you're going out to a restaurant. So as far as dealing with social situations, I think it's perfectly fine to eat both cooked meat and raw meat. Okay, so those are, like I said, that's my summary of the raw primal diet. It has two great things going for it. Number one, it is a meat-based diet. That already is fantastic. Number two, raw meat is very healthy and it has some benefits over cooked meat, like more nutrients. With that said, cooked meat is not unhealthy. It's still healthy for you. And then I said there's four key drawbacks. Number one is the whole issue with copper toxicity and too much liver. That's the biggest issue. Number two is salt, not getting enough salt in your diet. Number three is, like I said, maybe too many carbs. And number four is under eating. All right. Thanks for listening. That's my thoughts.